and just showcase your work, and then we'll take it from there. So get started.
Yeah, so I'll do a quick intro. So my name is Kofi. I draw manga and I box, and I'm a graduate student at the University of Illinois.
All right.
My name is Jaime Crespo. I bat right, throw right. I'm playing center field. I draw autobio comics. I've been doing it for, I'm in my 41st year of being published. And yeah, I don't go to school anymore. And I'm a grandpa.
Yeah. Hello, good afternoon. I'm Bahar Mori, and I am a PhD student of literature at University of Texas at Dallas. I'm an author, and sometimes I write poetry and translate things. I love words, you know. And I am teaching creative writing at UTD, and for the past 3 years, I am working on my debut graphic novel with the collaboration of an artist, Ayana Pio. Yeah. Thank you.
My name is Morris Richmond, and I create action and adventure comics.
All right.
Yes, welcome, and thank you all for being here today. So I'm just going to move in the order you all added the slides, just to make our clicking a little bit easier. So Kofi, if you could get us started. Just in general, we're thinking today about I as we in comics, so that relationship between the individual and the collective. That's come up quite a bit in terms of questions of representation. So continuing to think about that, how do you bring yourself to the comics work that you do, and how do you see that in relationship to your community or communities?
Yeah, so I got a lot of slides, so I'm trying to move quick. Let me check to see if this clip works first. So that's me looking like I talk smart. And like I said, I also box, so I like kind of balancing these two careers as like an artist, scholar, and a boxer. This is my last fight. I broke my nose, but I won the fight. Anyway, my work. So like I said, I draw manga, and I draw manga with black characters. I went to Japan to study manga, learn Japanese, and I'm working on my first book right now, which is called Azuki, which is about the rock, paper, scissors champion. It's a little girl who plays scissors every time, but she always wins in really stupid ways. So I'm interested in manga as a global form. Manga is a form, not a genre. It's not a specific type of content. And I'm interested in sort of opening up the medium and sort of joining and being a part of this sort of global collective of foreign mangaka, non-Japanese mangaka. And I see it as a way to both share and create culture. And I think this can create conversations. And I'm also interested in developing exchange relationships for like students in the US to be able to go to Japan and learn Japanese and learn manga. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Here's some more images from Azuki. Like I said, this is gonna be my first book. I gotta put some more work into it. I got a couple of chapters done. Also, I noticed a lot of people yesterday and today have talked a lot about sort of joy and pain. And I've also been thinking a lot about that relationship. So this is sort of a really joyous, sort of whimsical story that's just fun comedy. But I'm also working on sort of a really sad story because I think that's a part of our lives as well. So this is another piece that I'm working on at the same time called Karasu, which means crows. And it's a story about loss. And I'm using emptiness and open space, which comes from a Japanese aesthetics concept called Ma, which is like a Zen Buddhist concept. It means sort of contemplating what is not there. So I'm using that. I'm using space and emptiness as sort of a visual metaphor to induce Ma, and just a really sad, dramatic story about loss. So I'm working on these two stories together. So that's my way of sort of wrestling with the idea of joy versus like painful reality. I'm just working on two stories. Aside from my artwork, I also do a lot of engagement work. Like I said, I learned Japanese. I go back and forth to Japan. That's me with some kids I met at the airport, and I gave them my kids' book. So I make work in English and Japanese. So like these kids can grow up with like a black manga character, and kids back home can grow up with a character that looks like them in a form that they like to read. I want to introduce this person real quick. This is Kazuo Maekawa. He's a professional mangaka for 25 years. I met him on Facebook, actually. He's most known for his work Gyakuten Saiban, which is known in English as Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. So I worked with him. I went to Tokyo with him. We had a bunch of meetings with folks. And another thing he's famous for is winning the Chiba Tetsuya Award. And Chiba Tetsuya was the artist who made the most famous boxing manga of all time called Ashita no Joe, or Tomorrow's Joe, back in the 60s. And due to me being able to meet Mr. Maekawa, I was able to meet Chiba Tetsuya. This was back in August. So I'm working with him and his school right now on hosting an exhibition at the University of Illinois for his students, like so they can get their first international exhibition. So this is a way of trying to practically create international bridges through manga. Got to spend the day with Tetsuya Sensei, just talking about art and sort of giving me advice on how to make good stories and good art. And also got to see the giant Gundam. This is just some other stuff that I get to. I met some scholars, met a publisher and editor at Kodansha, which is like the biggest manga publisher. And I'm working right now. Hold on, I thought I cut this out. This was an interview. I don't have time to show this, but it was. I was on Japanese TV back in September, talking about like my research out there. And yeah, this was us just meeting to discuss practical exchange opportunities between the U.S. and Japan. Hopefully, we can expand it more. Mr. Maekawa is there on the end. I got $15,000 grant for my university. And I'm bringing him to Illinois actually in a few weeks, so that's what I'm getting ready for next, which is why I'm still not done with my book. The end.
So we'll go to more. Thank you, Kobe. Yeah, we'll get into more details later. I think we'll go to Lemorris next. And let me know if that clicker works all the way down there. And if not, you can put me to work here. The bottom arrow.
Okay. I don't know what to say.
Say it plain.
I talk all the time, but I don't know what to say. I started in comics back in the 80s. I started working for Now Comics, writing the Real Ghostbusters. And, last year I was on the panel about horror comics, and I didn't realize that I had written so many, but they were just jobs. So I was a freelance writer, and I would take whatever jobs come available. And there were all these companies wanting to do, shock horror, because it was the 90s, and it was, all, heroes that, that were bad boys and, cursing and stuff, and I didn't like any of that. I didn't want to write those kind of superheroes, and the superheroes that the heroes that I seemed to enjoy were old-fashioned, so I just started writing, the shock horror the way they wanted, but I tried to add, something that I hadn't seen, and I don't want to, beat a dead horse, but I just started trying to include characters that look like me, because they just weren't there. That's why I have that picture and the Boots of the Oppressor next to each other, because I kind of posed for that. But so I don't know what else to say, honestly. I'm also a huge fan of Hong Kong cinema, so I created Canton Kids so that I could honor Jackie Chan, Sammo Hung, and Yuen Biao. And this is also set in Chicago. This is my hometown, so they're actually having this fight on Michigan Avenue, and just look at that fantastic art.
Absolutely.
And this is an example of Canton Kids family kung fu style, the Ling family fist, which is just to hit you with, all of these massive punches that you just can't deflect. Boots of the Oppressor last year reached 25 years. That's the book that made me infamous. It's about a slave who's skinned alive, and her skin is used to create this pair of boots. But before she passes, the ancient gods that she worshipped gave her these powers where it becomes like this watermelon man scenario, where whoever possesses the boots suddenly becomes black, and during slavery, that's the worst thing that could happen to a white person. So, that's the cover and the black and white version of the cover. And as there's a page from the initial page of Boots of the Oppressor, drawn by Dan and David Day. And when this book came out, it's interesting. No one believed that I was black. And and North Star, the office wasn't too far from my house, but they received calls and letters, people wanting to know, was this writer black? His name doesn't sound black, you know. And it's like, is he black? Is he really black? And everyone wanted to interview me and take my picture to prove that I was black, and I was not happy with that. I was like, no, because it made me infamous, but at the same time, people started to think that I was, some kind of misogynistic, devil worshiper. Oh, he likes metal too. I don't, this is just not right. So, but yeah, with Boots of the Oppressor, I've been riding that horse for 25 years now, and I'm very proud of it. And I actually have written 2 sequels that I'm looking to kickstart and get going in the near future. My latest project is 70s, which we are still working the kinks out of, but 70s, it's about these 2 facilitators who work for a faceless, nameless corporation that travel between dimensions to make deals, put it that way. And the characters are Cleophas Archibald Cox III, that's the Robo Sapien, and his cousin Cold Duck. Then we have some pages from 70s, drawn by the great Juan Gomez, very good friend of mine. I'll try and bring him next year for sure, because I'm working on him. 70s. Cleophas, by the way, is a huge fan of rockabilly, so they're in the 50s dimension right now at a house party and causing trouble, of course. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah. Oh, and Jigaboo Devil. When I was an angry man, I created a comic called Jigaboo Devil. And I'm still angry, but not as angry. And so JBD, I'm also working with another one on creating a web comic version of it, and we're just changing the name to JBD, and a lot of it was really just inspired by the MAGA movement and Trump and all that. I didn't want to actually. To me, it was low-hanging fruit, but but I just had to agree with Juan. Yeah, this will work. Let's do it. So, it's 40 years after the original Jigaboo Devil story, where the country that he helped create has merged back with the United States, and it's not an easy transition. So, and that's it. I think that's you.
Yeah, but Jamie, let's hear you. Yeah.
Well, look at the work.
Yeah, let's hear you. But let me go back to the
If you just click through to the end, there's just will be a holder slide.
The other end. Oh, the first end?
Either end, it's bookended.
Either end,
Yeah, there we go. Jaime, take it over for us, please.
Okay, thanks. I'm sorry, everybody, I don't have any work here. Show, but I have a lot of work at my table. You can see it right there in the other room. I'll be the bald guy in there. I started.
Gotta be more specific.
One of them. It's tough in a room full of male models like that. So, footwear mostly for me. Yeah, I started cartooning. Oh boy. I mean, honestly, everybody started cartooning when you start. Probably you're a little kid. I mean, my very first. What did I say, art show, when I was probably like 3 years old, I got a hold of a ballpoint pen and I drew my mom's Bible of what I thought was like the family car and her cat. Needless to say, the critics soundly, rejected that show. And, but I continue unabated, not with Bibles, but that really got me going. I drew all through school, rarely in art class, but in every other class. And, I was a big fan of like everybody in my era, the Sunday comics, Mad Magazine, and lots of cartoons, lots of Warner Brothers, Disney. And this is before cable, so Saturday mornings were the time. And we were so desperate for animation. I'm talking like animated commercials, like beer commercials, 30 seconds. Like, yeah, it's the Hams beer. Hey, that was your day, I don't know what really had me go on. I never really got into superheroes, but Mad Magazine, the EC stuff, all the horror comics. And then when I discovered, mind you, I'm younger than these guys, but I discovered the hippie comics. And it was just a mind blower because you could swear in there, you could talk about anything. It really showed me you could talk about anything and show anything. And that's where I went from there. And I got my first comic published few months, maybe a year after high school, and $25. Don't ask for a loan. That was righteous bucks back then, man. That's a lot of tacos. And then, from that time on, just one thing after another, I just kept drawing, and then pretty soon, before I knew it, I was living in San Francisco in the hotbed of underground cartooning in the 60s and the 70s. And by the 80s, I was becoming part of, believe it or not, the next wave, the next kids that were up and coming. And there were, by 1990, my little group of people were these like kids that came to town. Keith Knight, Keith and our dear friends, Nina Paley, Brian Wilcox and Hugo Kobayashi and myself. And from there, those were back in the days when you had weekly and monthly publications. So everybody had work, writers, cartoonists. Just around the Bay Area, I was probably in anywhere from 3 to 5 publications every month. Not to mention the stuff I was doing on my own. Then the publishers came. I had some publishers. I won't mention them because none of those ended well. And pretty soon I'm hanging out with Hernandez brothers and Love and Rockets. And I'm friends. I'm having dinner at Spain Rodriguez's house. And maybe that's Clay Wilson. He's asking me to a party. And it was wonderful. And I'm still doing it to this day. I'm back self-publishing. I'm working on my first graphic novel. It's called Sinners and Saints. And I used to live in, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Tenderloin in San Francisco. As Chappelle said, there's nothing tender about it. I used to live there in the mid-'80s. I was in a band, and the band leader died. And suddenly I was in town without a gig. So I got a job as a maintenance man janitor at an SRO hotel, which I ended up living in. And this is when this new drug was coming in called crack. You can use your imaginations from there. So that's what this is about. After a while, I did strips called Tales from the Edge of Hell, which were 6 panels about people that lived in the hotel or people on the streets and situations and whatnot. And friends of mine years later were saying, you should flesh that out, man, make it bigger stories. So now I'm going to have like a 250-page graphic novel of all of the chicanery that went on. And the times that we're living, I'm using the language that people communicated with, so it's not going to be for the faint of heart, and some of the situations too. I like to keep the integrity of the stories. It's not for sensationalism, but more to show you the weight, of what was going down. And then I already have my second graphic novel already planned out. It's already roughed out, and that one's called Funniest Guy in the Room. And it's basically a memoir of my childhood up to about high school. And there's the title's kind of misleading, but once you read it, you'll understand why. And that's what I'm doing right now. And I have self-published stuff, as I mentioned, at the table.
Look for the bald guy.
You should look for the bald guy. Yeah. So there it is.
And then Bahar, you can take it over.
Okay, sure. So let's go from here. Do you want to refresh our mind with the question one more time?
Yeah, of course. So the question is, how do you think about the relationship between the individual or the I and the collective or the we in your work?
Yeah. Thank you. I immigrated here 10 years ago and with my husband. And after a while, I was thinking that why am I here? You know, there is a phase in immigration. It is called honeymoon ending. It is like things are not that great anymore, and some question will come up in your head, and that critical question that what am I doing here? You know, how I ended up here? You know, I don't know the language very well. I don't know the culture. So whole my family were there. You know, so. To speculate on the answer of this question, I thought, okay, something happened 2 years ago and then we decided to immigrate. No, something else happened 5 years ago. Oh, no, it was 10 years ago. And then I started digging my psyche and went back and I figured out it started from my childhood and it was war, you know? And I started writing stories to find answer to that question. Many of us are writers, artists, and we create things to heal our souls. But it's like a sublimation of our agonies, our pains into something meaningful and positive. But I thought maybe that's an opportunity that collect other stories from people from Iran, individuals, women especially, and widen the lens and try to represent a larger group. So it didn't happen overnight, but I found myself keep interviewing with people, different generations, how Islamic revolution impacted their life, how war changed the narrative of their lives. So I started writing. I carried some stories with me. I started interviewing with people, and I thought I need to write it in English because I always wrote in Farsi, and I published a couple of works. But I thought, no, my audience are people who doesn't know where is Iran, basically, and they thought, okay, all the Middle East is just one place, and everybody are like each other, you know. So, and in next step, I thought sometimes it seems hard to explain the architecture, the rituals, the traditions, you know, even appearance of the characters. So maybe it is good. It is better to add art to give some visual information to our readers. And then I started working with Ayana. Ayana is an immigrant. She is same age as me, so we've been through kind of similar experiences. So now this narrative shifted from I to we, and this main character, no, sorry. Yeah, this main character, Neda, is representative of many women. And so it's not an autobiography, it's semi-autobiography. And I deliberately chose different name for this character. And why Neda? Why this name? Neda means the voice in Farsi Arabic. But another thing happened in my life, and in 2009 there was a series of protests in Iran. It was called Green Movement, and we were out in protest, and a girl, Neda Al Sultan, was shot in the street, and because of the technology, she was the first girl who received attention, and her death was captured, and it became viral. And I was there. I was in that street in that day, and it was like 3 weeks to my wedding, and I went shopping for my wedding, and it was protest, and I joined. And from that day, I always thought, oh my gosh, it could be me. Neda Al Sultan was the same age as me, and she wasn't an activist. She was a girl, a passionate girl, full of life, and she didn't care about, who is in power. She just wanted to live, and she got shot, and she was out of a singing class, So from that moment, I thought it could be me. And now I have a mission to leave behalf of her and behalf of many young people, that were killed because of war, because of dictatorship, all those reasons. So I think I have a picture of Neda. Let me show you now, and I'll be back. Yeah, she is Neda. Yeah. So this started, and a lot of issues that are reflected in this story. It's not just Bahar's problems or issues. It's not a individualistic narrative. It is very collective. For example, war. This character celebrated her 7th birthday in a basement that they had shelter because of bombardment in Tehran. And I remember those nights. And I had the privilege of being so little that I couldn't tell what is going on, So this is not just my story. It is a collective memory of my generation. And whenever we are sitting together and talking, yeah, I remember that night that happened, And yeah, my aunt called our house. Yeah, they said in our neighborhood there was a house was cracked down. So those conversations seems very normal to us, but when you change your perspective, you think, no, it is not. Yeah, and another thing, struggle with mandatory hijab. I'm sure many of you are aware of what is going on in Iran for the past few months, and it is because of the deaths of Mahsa Amini for the, I call it immorality police, because it's not a morality police. Yeah, and she died. And again, our generation had difficulty with that mandatory hijab, and especially I always had big hair, big frizzy hair, and it wasn't manageable, So, and those things, they try to tell us in school that you should protect yourself, you should be decent, you should be this or that, and all those guilt that they try to give you. Again, it wasn't something just on me. It was a generational thing. And in this chapter, I talked about another issue. In Iran, girls cannot go to a stadium. It's a male-only privilege. Going to a stadium and watch a simple soccer, game. And my characters love going to a stadium, and many of my classmates did this. I wasn't a big fan of soccer, but I had classmates who disguised as men and went. And you are threatening yourself not only by the authorities, but also with your family. What if your brother found out? What if your father found out? And in this chapter, the characters going there, and I use that opportunity that reflecting LGBTQA plus communities situation in my book too, because this character is a transgender man, but because of the segregation, they pushed him into girls' school. He needs to mingle with girls, And in this chapter, again, from a true story, my best friend is a singer, and in Iran, girls cannot perform singing. And that's interesting, that how women keep practicing art, keep that passion alive, even though there is no place to perform. They don't care. It's like you are an author and no one wants to publish your work. You want to stop writing because it is meaning of your life. And my best friend is a singer, and her family didn't know that she is going to singing class, and no one supports her. And sometimes she didn't have any space to practice, because in Persian traditional singing, and I'm sure in all the singing styles, you need to release your voice. And sometimes we were on overpasses, and I was like guarding, and she was singing, and it was traffic, and no one knows what is going on. What is that angelic voice coming from? So, and this is Green Movement that I talked, and her best friend was arrested, and Iranian women are not just fighting with dictatorship. Dictatorship, sometimes it is in their houses, and something that I want to mention in here. I want to say that Iranian women are not victims. They are fighters. I don't like that depiction. We resist in every way possible. Resistance sometimes when you are 7 years old and they impose mandatory hijab on you and you make it loose. If they don't let you to sing, you will go to overpasses and keep singing. I don't like that victim identity that is associated with Iranian women, and I'm so glad that world see who we are, for the past few months. So that binary of villain and victim that Middle Eastern receives is not a true thing. We are humans, like everybody else. But sometimes we are terrorists, we are like jihadists, we are fundamentalists, and sometimes, oh, you're from Middle East, I'm sorry about that. You know? No, I don't want that, because we are fighting for our rights like everybody else in this world. We are all fighting, but our battlefields are different. You know, in here, women are fighting for their bodily autonomy. For we are fighting for LGBTQA+ rights. You know, racial equities. And over there, we are fighting for different things. But at the end of the day, all of us are fighters. None of us are victims, right? So I wanted to show how resistance manifested itself in different aspects of life. You know, sometimes just by picking your favorite man, when they want to they force you to do an arranged marriage, but you say no. You know, I'll marry my boyfriend, or I'll date my favorite person. So all those things, and yeah. So let me see what else I have. Yeah, and in later chapters, I covered some issues about immigration and how you feel alienated, how you feel you are separated. This comes from my first experience of Halloween, because we didn't have Halloween, you know, over there, and I came and I didn't know what is going on, and I was so lonely those days, you know. My husband, shocked to him, you know, he was so supportive, but, you know, you have your network of family, friends, and you have nothing when you are an immigrant, and you try to go to different events, and sometimes you don't relate, you know? Yeah, and this is Neda Sultan, this is Mahsa Amini, which Woman Life Freedom uprising started with her death, and yeah, we keep fighting. Yeah.
Thank you, Bahar, for sharing that really beautiful work, and hearing you speak about it, it's clear that you're so passionate, and it's very clear why you won that award.
Yeah, thank you.
The images that you concluded with really just bring to mind that relationship between the individual and the collective.
Yes.
With Neda and Masa's images, their faces side by side, separated by just over a decade. And I appreciate the way that, I'm going to quote you directly because I don't want to mess it up, but you said that your work is semi-autobiographical, but you're thinking about a collective memory of your generation. So those images did that really elegantly. I'd like to pose just one question for the group before we open it up to the audience, and that's thinking about this relationship between the individual and the we a little bit more. As Bahar has noted, that can be a source of collective resistance and power. But then Lamores, you mentioned your experience with Boots of the Oppressor and the backlash you received for drawing a story of an enslaved woman, and then the need that some felt for you to sort of authenticate that story through your own identity. And I know, Kofi, you mentioned the global collective of manga artists that include non-Japanese creators. So I'm wondering if you each might briefly talk about both the possibilities, that collective power and resistance, but maybe also some of the tensions that come up between the I and the we, the individual and the collective.
I don't know.
Do you want to go back to the slides?
No. I'm just trying to think of an answer. As a creator, I always felt that my main job was to entertain. And there were characters that I wanted to write that no one wanted to give me a chance to write because they assumed that because I was black, I could only write about race, and I had all this baggage. But I understood the characters, because characters come first. I understood the characters. Writing a Speed Racer story was easy, but it took just months of convincing. Let me show you my Speed Racer plot. Let me show you my Speed Racer plot, and then you sneak in a black character, because you never saw many black characters in Speed Racer, but you wanted to have one there anyway. I don't know. I don't know if my mindset was always on what will sell. If I like it, someone else will like it. This is what we should do. I think I've always been fortunate that I found early in my career, before I started self-publishing, I found publishers who were eventually interested in what I had to say, and they were interested in the characters that I wanted to show in the stories. I don't know if I'm answering your question. Early on, I think I just attacked things differently. I was a freelance writer, and I wanted to prove that I could tackle any job that you gave me, regardless of my ethnicity, regardless of where you think I come from, regardless of my love of metal. I can write anything that you ask me to, and I think even now I think that's still the battle. But I just and I always hope that by being there, I was the example. It wasn't as much about it was about me getting to work. But once I was there, and I was at a convention, I was at some publisher's table or my own table, and people would show up. And this is this is 80s, 90s, 2000s. People would come to the conventions, and they wouldn't see anybody of color, and then they would turn around and they would see me, and suddenly run to the table. Oh man, I'm glad you're here. How do you do this? How do you get started? And I always tried to give good advice, but I always told them to be flexible, be able to write anything, not just, I know you've got this idea that you want to bring to life, but don't be afraid to take someone else's job to help them bring their idea to life as you're working on yours.
Thank you. Yeah, that speaks really elegantly to something that Caitlin said on the previous panel about the way that certain expectations are placed on us before we even arrive on the scene and without our consent. So ways that you're working against and writing against those, and also a reminder that representation does matter, and having that critical mass matters as well. If others feel called, please have at it.
Yeah, speaking of representation, I've been thinking a lot lately about how sharing is generative and how art making is a form of knowledge production. And I'm going to give a couple of examples. And when I think about art, I also think about, as a boxer, I think about martial arts. I've studied a lot of martial arts. I grew up in Kung Fu. I did Capoeira, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, MMA, and wrestling and boxing. And it's interesting because although I'm a boxer, I tell everybody the best thing, the most practical form of self-defense is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I always tell people that. You should learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because you use body mechanics in a way where it doesn't matter how big your opponent is. Best way to learn how to defend yourself. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu wouldn't exist if it wasn't for like Brazilian and Japanese contact. Jiu-Jitsu comes, Judo, Jiu-Jitsu, it's a Japanese martial art, and it was, I don't remember which one, but a member of the Gracie family. The Gracie family is the ones who invented Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. There was a man with a heart condition who was too weak to do some of the techniques, so he adjusted it so you use leverage and use your body to like do locks and breaks, and that sort of essentially created the mixed martial arts movement. And UFC, Royce Gracie won the first 2 UFCs. He created this huge movement across the martial arts world. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu became probably the most popular martial art all around the world. That wouldn't have happened without cultural mixing. I got one more I went to a hip hop show in Fukuoka once, and So hip hop, that's a black form. But I'm thinking about how sharing it in a new context can create new ideas, and like I said, it's knowledge production. So Japanese is interesting because it's a postpositional language. So the verb comes at the very end of the sentence. You think preposition, postposition. So it's like store to I go, or like food I eat, I food eat, right? So what's interesting is also every verb rhymes. In Japanese, every single verb rhymes. Aruku, to walk, right? Suwaru, to sit. Hanasu, to talk. Every verb rhymes. So that means every sentence rhymes because the verb is always at the end of the sentence. So the kinds of rhymes that you can come up with in Japanese, you can rhyme every sentence with every sentence. And if we keep that just to English, we're missing out on a lot of art. So that's sort of the way that I approach manga when I'm thinking about the international manga movement. Manga is a Japanese form. Again, it's not a genre, it's not content, it doesn't have to be about Japan. But think about all the kinds of stories that we can see, all the things that we've been missing out on with other cultures, people from other languages engaging with the forum, the kind of new stories that we can create.
After all this, man,
Oh my goodness.
I'm happy to be here.
Bald men unite.
Yeah. Actually, no, there's a book I have, and it's, again, being the oldest person here, I came up in a time we didn't have any of this. Or my mother is from northern Mexico, but she's half Apache. We were raised native. And growing up as a kid, the only images I saw on TV, at least for me, was Speedy Gonzales and Native Americans being killed by John Wayne. And Native Americans were being played by Italians and Jews, by the way. I got into the early period of skateboarding and punk rock. Me and my best friend Arturo, and we lived in a black neighborhood. And we tried to have a band, have a book, and they're called Los Punkers. And we got shit from everybody, from every side. You guys are doing this white boy stuff. Then we'd go play these parties, and they were like, oh, the janitorial staff's here, things like that. It was rugged, man. I mean, it was pioneering. But we persevered. I mean, in a different way, but in the same way. Yeah, that, we had a vision and we had something to say, and this is how we wanted to say it. And we didn't believe in the fronteras, the borders that were put up for, so we go skate pools or something, the white guys would be there and give us, crap for being from outside of the neighborhood. But we still wanted to do it, and we did it better than them, and some people get their mouth smacked afterwards, maybe. But that's not my point. My point is that I tell kids I'm great with free advice. I don't always follow it. But, the one thing is I always tell kids, don't let anybody tell you what to do. You don't have to be a cholo. You don't have to do what's in your heart. And look over the fence. There's always interesting stuff there, And now I've traveled half around the world and I see skaters all over the world. I see, punk rock is global and has been. And, from hip hop and underground, it's amazing now. And now we have events like this. And it's getting bigger and bigger. So I feel lucky that I got to live this long to see this come in my lifetime. And I wish I can live longer to see where it's going to end up. That's
What's up? That makes your brain to science and keep you alive.
Yeah, science.
You suddenly wake up in 3,000, you'll know.
3,000, yeah.
As long as you can fix my knees.
Like the premise of the next comment. Zahar, if you have any thoughts you want to share, I think that might be the concluding remarks for us.
I wanted to share something with you, about an experience. It is comic and tragic at the same time, but it might bring some insight for you. Sometimes immigrants are associated to the regimes, the governments that they are, that they spend majority of their life to fighting with. For example, authors, artists from Iran, immigrated because they were the other over there. They were rejected by the authority, by the dictatorship, and they come to West, like in my experience, United States, and sometimes you are identified with the dictatorship that you were opposed for the majority of your life, and it's like being burned twice, being by them. You are the other there, and you are the other here, and it is a very difficult experience. And the resolution that I found to that issue is sharing your story. I think sharing our stories is an essential tool to spread empathy. Because when we don't know each other, we afraid of each other, But when we know each other's story, we have a feeling to each other, and we want support the people that we know their stories. They are not a threat anymore. They are not a danger to us. So I know a lot of us coming from immigrant backgrounds, so it is an essential purpose, mission for us to share our story, to spread peace. The outcome would be peace, because now people know, otherwise, what do we expect? No one will knock our door and ask, hey, what is your story? It is my job, it is our job to deliver our story in the best way possible. Sometimes add humor to our tragedies, to make them laugh and enjoy, and can have that medicine of wisdom and medicine of awareness, So I think what we are doing is important, what all we are doing as artists and as storytellers. Yeah, and I hope whatever we are doing can contribute to a global peace. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that. I think you're right. Stories are good medicine. And thank you all for sharing your stories with us. And we'll see you all at the next panel. Woo!